So without further ado, let's go ahead. I'd like to introduce Hannes Bernien, who's going to chair this session. I think many of you know Hannes. He's one of the leaders in the field of cold atom quantum science and technology. Hannes, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this day today where we have really amazing speakers. We start with the DOE perspective. We had a little program change. The Undersecretary of Energy, Jerry Richmond, could unfortunately not join us, but instead I'm really excited to welcome Barbara Helland to present the DOE perspective. So Barbara Helland is the Associate Director at the Office of Science's Advanced Computing, Scientific Computing Research Program, where she's leading the initiative of exascale computing. Barbara Helland has an impressive career, starting in research and high-performance computing, and now leading really large programs in the area. She spent her first 25 years at Ames Laboratory, then she went to the Krell Institute, and later joined the DOE. The DOE. I'm really looking forward to your talk. Barbara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hans, and good morning to you all. And first of all, I would like to congratulate all of the quantum creators, awardees, prize awardees. I think I reviewed your abstracts online before I came, and you're in a truly impressive group. And after I did that, I kind of geared my talk to you because one of the things that's been constant throughout my career is my involvement in creating the next generation of workers. I've been focused on creating the next generation of computational scientists, and I welcome quantum scientists to that fold. So with that, I would like to talk about QIS at the Department of Energy. Our investments enable a steady progress in a number of critical fundamental technical fronts, as you'll see when I talk about the Office of Science. QIS is embedded in everything that the 6 program offices do, and it was natural for us to come together in 2017 and develop a coordinated quantum program right before the passage of the National Quantum Information Act. But we have a multi-pronged strategy, so we focus on core basic research. That's what our forte is. But at the same time, we move from single PI funded research to small teams to large centers like I'm sure you heard about yesterday, QNext and SQMS, which are here in the Chicago area. But we have within the department, we have a number of unique infrastructure development that we can bring to the table, plus supporting technology, but we're really, really focused on creating the next generation of workers. So this is, I wanted to make sure that Jerry Richmond was here, so this is the leadership of the department right now. As you'll notice, it's all women. Our secretary is Jennifer Grandholm, and Jerry Richmond is in the middle. She's the Undersecretary for Science and Innovation. And then my immediate director in the Office of Science is Dr. Asma Burhay. And as you can, and what I wanted to point out is the department, a lot of people don't know the Department of Energy. We've been called the Department of Everything. Secretary Grandholm considers us the Department of Innovation. But what I have underlined here in the Office of Science, this is Dr. Richmond's directorate, and the Office of Science is where we sit. And this is really the basic research arm of the department. We also have investments in stockpiled stewardship. We also do the grid, if you think of the electric grid and the lights in here, we focus on that. Plus we have the strategic oil reserve. So we do a lot in the Department of Energy. And quantum cuts across everything we do in the Office of Science. These are the 6 main program offices in the Office of Science. My program, Advanced Scientific Computing Research, and my partners in the Office of Science are Basic Energy Sciences, Biological and Environmental Research, Fusion Energy Sciences, High Energy Physics, Nuclear Physics, and then on the right there is isotope program. We pulled it out of nuclear physics because it is so important to quantum. Most quantum qubits need some kind of isotopes. But you can see from this slide that the Office of Science really is doing fundamental research in quantum. I'm interested in quantum computing algorithms because I have the large computing centers in the Department of Energy. I realize that someday those accelerators connected to those classical computers are going to be quantum computers. So I have to start now and figure out how we're going to connect those, and a lot of work that they're doing here at the Quantum Exchange, at Fermi, at Argonne on networking is going to lead the way for how we can connect those computers. So we're also interested in networking. But again, I have to help people get on those computers and use them, so we're interested in developing the algorithms. And the same with all of the other program offices in the Office of Science. They're interested in eventually using the quantum computers to aid their research. Basic Energy Sciences is, even though it's not listed on the slide, it says they're interested in systems, but they are the homes of material research within the department, and materials is critical to quantum. Biological environmental research, you wouldn't think, what are they doing? But sensors, they're thinking about quantum-based biological sensors that are non-invasive. Fusion is looking more at plasma, how quantum plasmas figure in to quantum sensing. And of course, high energy physics and nuclear physics are natural. It's from those two programs that we've gotten a lot of technology in cooling technologies, cryostats, dilution refrigerations, RF cavities, and of course, nuclear physics is really interested in small, and how they can use quantum computers to actually understand what is making up matter. And I think I've already mentioned isotopes. But this is the Department of Energy. And until 2017, we were all going on our same way, and we were very siloed. But we've come back, we've come together, we're very coordinated, and we work across all of the programs. When I talk about the centers in a little bit, all the centers had to apply to areas that were that more than one program cared about. But I also mentioned that we had unique resources. We have, and I'll talk about nanocenters later, but we have clean rooms that can help do fabrication that we've had for a number of years. We've had light sources, hard and soft. We have lithographic etching and deposition tools, and this has actually been key for what we're doing in my computing areas. But we also have engineered physical systems. One of the things that one of the nuclear physics research programs showed is cosmic rays can impact qubits, the coherence. So it becomes important to have EM shielded rooms, and if you're going to do anything with the cryostat, low vibration chambers, but more important, we have deep mine shafts. And we also, as I noted, we're doing theory and computing. And this is just a highlight of some of those unique structures. We have the 5 nanocenters that go across the 5 Department of Energy labs. Actually, the Office of Science is stewarded of 10 of the National Department of Energy labs. There are 17 in total. The other thing that my program has funded, we funded 2 quantum computing test beds, one at Berkeley and one at Sandia. But we've also funded research in quantum networking, but also we've funded recently 2 quantum networking test beds. And we also, I talked about training the staff at the OLCF to understand when people might use quantum and when people might use classical computing, and that was the genesis of the QCUP program, or the Quantum Computing User Program at Oak Ridge, where we give access to the commercial quantum computers that are available today. But we hope to expand this. We hope to have some more test beds. We want to have broader access to the quantum computing tools that exist today, so that other people can use them and understand how you're going to do it and what we need to do to advance the future. And then let me just talk about the 5 national quantum centers. So I talked about a lot of what we do in the basic research program are funding single investigator research projects or small teams, but the Quantum National QIS Research Center was actually called for in the NQI Act, that the department could establish up to 5 of these. And we did a call in 2020, and as a result, established these 5 centers. QNext is here. David is the leader of that here at Argonne and University of Chicago. The Supercomputing Quantum Materials and Systems, SQMS, is actually down the road at Fermilab. The Quantum System Accelerator is at Berkeley, and they're partnering with Sandia, and the Quantum Science Center is at Oak Ridge, and Co-Design for Quantum Applications is at Brookhaven. So those are 5 of the National Energy Labs. But the interesting thing the purpose of the centers was to kind of bridge the basic research and where, we would like to transition technology to industry. So it's at a higher TRL level or, a higher level of readiness to go to industry or to be used than, say, what we're doing in basic research. But they have to cross-cut many of the areas that we're doing in the basic research because they're funded, the centers are actually funded from all of the 6 programs within the Office of Science. We've pooled our funds. And so they have addressing many cross-cutting challenges that I listed. They have a stewardship of developing the quantum ecosystem. So they come together and we ask them to meet quite often. In fact, all the directors for all the centers meet in an executive committee, and they establish a roadmap and develop milestones for what they want to do together. So that's the collaborative management status. But I think one of the most important things that the quantum centers can do in connection with our quantum research program is help, identify the tools, the technologies that we need for the future, but also build the workforce. You can see from this slide that we have 1,200 people that are part of the centers, but we're supporting 600 students and postdocs. And I can tell you the early meetings where we brought the center directors together, the people at my level in the Office of Science were interested, well, what happens if you don't get all the funding? How are you going to protect the students and postdocs? Because this is really important to us, maintaining that path or that pipeline for the future. And of course, we have 80 institutions and we have 24 states, including the District of Columbia, Columbus, where I am, and then, of course, Canada and Italy. But I think what's important here is we have 50 states in the United States and only 24 are represented. And so we would like to expand. And this is a goal that both that DOE shares with NSF, is to actually, if you think about where our centers reside, it's across the northern tier of the United States, except for Oak Ridge. But how can we expand to the other states? What do we need to do to broaden the workforce? And that's a lot of what the centers are doing. As you can see here on this slide, that they have a number of summer programs, summer schools. Most of the centers have their own summer school, but then they come together and support a career fair where they bring people in. But the centers have also gone out and talked to the Federal Laboratory Consortium and said, this is what quantum is. This is why you should pay attention to quantum. And at the same time, they turn around and are very active in promoting quantum to other areas, to industry, to other academia, to say, look, this is what the DOE labs have to offer. And so organizing workshops and providing summer schools for teachers is just a little bit of what they do. They also do research. They also, QNext is really integral in developing those fabrication tools for developing quantum technology so that people can use them as a foundry. So you can come in and get qubits from them. And so this is the next step of where we want to go. And so we're actually excited about what our centers are doing. But let me step back. So I've talked about quantum at the Department of Energy, and I think it's a very exciting future for quantum within the department because it's got a lot of support, especially within the Office of Science. But we have a number of other programs that we can bring people to our labs. And you can see from this slide that it goes all the way from undergraduate community colleges, where we can bring students in for a 3-month sabbatical at a lab. And the nice thing about the SULI program, the undergraduate one, is it's not just for the summer. It can be any time throughout the year. I think they have 3 calls throughout the year. We also are focused on community colleges, recognizing that a lot of students' path to universities is not always straight at a university, but many come from the community college. So we want to get those students early in the program to continue and give them the tools that they need to continue their STEM research. And recognizing that it's not just the students, that if we train the students, it's no good if we haven't also trained the faculty. So we have programs where the faculty can bring students to a lab and work on a project with the labs for a summer, and that's our visiting faculty program. Finally, we have the Office of Science Graduate Student Research Program, where if you have PhD students, they can actually come to the labs and do their thesis research at our labs. And they get a small stipend and funded to go there. So certainly, students can come and work with any of our quantum centers through the Office of Science Graduate Research Program. One of the programs that's not here that I run is the Computational Science Graduate Fellowship Program, and this is one where we've always tried to develop computational scientists. But we're proud of that program because one of the things that we always do is we're forward-looking, so that when right at the beginning of the need for computational biologists, we had been funding biologists to come in and learn how to use our computers for a number of years. We anticipated the data tsunami as well, but now we are actually broadening the program, so we really have had each year for the last 3 years or 4 years had about 2 or 3 students or fellows that are actually working on quantum, in the area of quantum. So there's a broad number of programs across the Department of Energy to build up that workforce. But what I really want to talk to, when I looked at online, and I saw many of you were postdocs, students, or early in your academic career, one of the programs that really resonates with I think should resonate with you is our early career research program. Because we established this in 2010 so that we could build up our own pipeline of people that and in the early career and fund those people, and so that we could bring in new ideas, but make sure that we were building programs around those. So as you can see, the goal here is to bolster our scientific research, workforce, And applications can come from all of the programs across the department. And you can see here we also listed the isotope research program, but one of the other cross-cutting programs that we have in the department is the accelerator R&D because of the light sources, and accelerators cut across many of the areas of the Office of Science. But we're also more and more aware that we need to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and those are important aspects of the program. I expect this year's call to be out sometime this week, and so this is I want to bring the eligibility information to you. So at an academic institution, it can be an assistant or an untenured associate professor. The important thing is they have to be working on a tenure track. At the national labs, they need to be full-time, permanent, non-postdoctoral fellows. And the key thing here is you can't be more than 10 years past when you got your PhD and when we released our funding opportunity. That's what FOA is, a funding opportunity announcement. So that if we release it in 2022, you should have gotten, you're eligible if you've gotten your PhD in 2012. But we are looking at it because we realize COVID caused a problem, so we're looking at that requirement. Normally, the funding levels are $150K a year for 5 years. The awards are for 5 years. For university grant and lab grants, they're $500K a year. And like I said, the FOA should be out soon, hopefully sometime this week. And I just wanted to quickly show this is my programs, the early career people that we selected last year. You'll notice the bottom one is quantum. We've had a quantum topic for several years, and I think all of the other program offices have quantum topics too. And I think it's very successful. Now, the bad thing about this slide is I have one woman, and many years I struggled to get one woman. So I was really pleased to see the number of women awardees in the Creators Prize. So I would like to see those people applying for my early career program. 2 other programs I want to talk about quickly. Last year, it's called Reaching a New Energy Sciences Workforce, and these are 2, I think, programs we started with the new administration where we're really focused on reaching out to HBCUs and so historically black colleges and minority-serving institutions that are normally not funded by the Department of Energy. Not because we don't want to, because we're trying to figure out how we can increase that participation. So we spent this last 2 years, actually listening to HBCUs and MSIs telling us what was causing some of the problems that we couldn't do it. And what we heard was, okay, going back to what I said earlier, you train the students, but then they come back to the university and they can't continue their research. So we need to train the faculty, we need to do something about infrastructure at the universities. But at the same time, we don't always recognize some of how difficult it is at some small universities when we have grants that cut across. We send out many FOAs, and they have to figure out which one they can apply to. And they didn't always know that we would fund, if you have to teach, we would fund people to buy out your teaching contracts so you could focus on work. So we identified allowable costs. We're focused on making it easier for them to apply. And so those are some of the things we learned in the outreach session. I'll quickly go because I only have a minute. So anyway, we focused within the office, my office, on quantum last year. The other thing that goes along with Renew is our FAIR program, which is actually funded, where Renew is focused on training. FAIR is focused on actually building up what you need in the university. So this will support funds to go it includes funds for equipment or infrastructure, which I think is important. Again, the funds will go to HBCUs or MSIs, the majority, but they can partner. They can partner with labs, they can partner with you. And so I just want to close with, come back to what the Office of Science goals are. We're investing with a national impact, and that's our science, or our centers, what we want to do with the centers. But at the same time, we're doing all of ESC. We're interested in core research, fundamental research that's going to lead to the next generation of quantum computers, quantum sensors, whatever. We're involved with the whole community, especially what David is doing here in the Quantum Exchange is an example to all of us. But we also collaborate. Later on, you're going to hear from Sean Jones from the National Science Foundation. We have, the DOE and NSF have established a joint oversight group, a JOG, that actually coordinates the efforts between the 2 partners. We have a large, interagency, very active coordination subcommittee that talks about what we're doing. At the same time, we also are cognizant of what the international community is doing. 2 weeks ago, I was meeting with the Germans to find out what they're doing with quantum. So I want to underscore that QIS in Office of Science is a long-term effort. We're here to stay. And the one last thing I want to say is it's from accomplishments from people like you that are helping us when we have to go to Congress to convince them to re-up the National Quantum Information Act, that we need the work that you're doing and that you've done. So I thank you for that.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Barbara. So I'm opening up the floor for questions. So think about what you want to learn from the DOE about these programs. Let me maybe start with a question and ask you, so where do you see these quantum centers in the future? Do you think this will continue? Will there be more centers? Will the centers get larger?
I would, at the very, very least, I would like to see the centers have another 5 years. I think that's what we've always planned. I think if we could have additional centers, we would try to do it at an MSI or HBCU. But I think the centers have been very effective coming together.
Absolutely.
So I certainly, if funding permitted, would do more centers. But I would like to keep the centers we've got.
Great. Questions from the audience? I see one question there.
Yeah, hi. I have a question on the workforce development aspect that you talked about. So I think the national network of DOE labs is really an excellent resource for training undergraduates, and the programs that you have in place are really impactful. But I think there's also a question of scaling. There's just only so many students who can come for an RE type experience. And in particular in quantum and other emerging areas, there's a real challenge in getting undergraduates hands-on with relevant systems as part of their training. So I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about potentially extending this framework at DOE to perhaps host central locations for undergraduate lab classes, for example, that have the potential to touch more students than just people who be on site currently.
And certainly that latter is something, the slide I took out of my deck is our workforce development program actually did a study of what they need, what DOE needs to do to broaden our base of programs. And I think you've hit it right, that people need to come and use our facilities, and that's why we have the quantum test beds. But the quantum test beds that I have are small. We would like to do more of those. Hopefully we can bring people into the quantum center. So we have the labs, but we also have the quantum centers, so we can kind of double up there. But we need to figure out, I would love to, when we first started talking about quantum centers, the idea was to do regional centers. But I need to have labs in some other regions. But the centers that we've gotten have done really well about reaching out. So I'd like to see them do, and I think they are doing this, have some of their training at some of their universities, and so we can expand that. So it is a program. The scale has always been a problem. But one of the things to renew, I don't know if you noticed on the slide that we were able to double our funding. So hopefully as we go forward, we'll be able to double the funding that we can support the SULI program and things like that, because a lot of it comes down to funding. And I know many times the labs will fund people in addition to what we do with the SULI program. So I'm not sure that answered your question, but it was a good question, and yes, we have to do better.
There's a question there.
Yes. My name is Walter Massey, and I was former director of the NSF and also former director of Argonne National Lab. And I've seen these programs over the years. By the way, this is fantastic. Over the years developed in the new areas. And it's always a challenge to make sure that underrepresented groups really get involved and engage early on so they don't get left behind. So I was very interested and excited to hear about your concern now to get HBCUs. But I've gotten involved lately with community colleges. I'm chairman of the board of Chicago City Colleges. And you mentioned briefly, but I'm learning that that's a wonderful source of bright, highly motivated young people who have had not the opportunity, because of economics and other things, to really move ahead in these kinds of fields. I wonder, could you say just a little more about your thoughts of how you might reach the community colleges?
Yeah, and let me just say, my sister was dean of a community college in Iowa, so I'm very supportive of community college. And I don't know if many people know that Ames Lab actually sets it on Iowa State University. And when I was at Ames Lab, one of the telling statistics that came out was 40% of the people coming to Iowa State were coming from community colleges, not from high schools. So I think we have to do more, because quantum workforce is going to need more than just PhD students that are represented here. We're going to need technicians. We're going to need people that are quantum aware, and we're going to need to bring those people in and really focus on community colleges to bring those people in and keep them in the STEM resource. But if they have other interests, make sure that we're supporting those other interests so that they can go on and do, something in the area of quantum that we're going to need for the workforce, like build cryostats or work in our isotope production facilities. But we're going to need all of that going forward, much like we had to build a computer workforce a number of years ago. So I think we've got to reach out to everybody. And so I'm very supportive of reaching out to community colleges. And if you have ideas of what we can do more, we will certainly listen. Yeah.
Great. Maybe one final question up there. Thank you.
Hi, this is a wonderful presentation. I'm a staff scientist at Argonne. I think these programs are phenomenal. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect on the programs, particularly maybe interfacing with some of the national lab staff, where there isn't as much notification about like the opportunities. I think there tends to be like a little bit of a bidding war for students. I think if there was a concerted effort to kind of pull the scientists in to kind of almost assign students and say, okay, we have these number of students that are interested in quantum. We really want you to, take these students and have them immersive in your groups. It would work a lot better than maybe the programs as they are now, where we kind of get an email and they say, okay, in 2 days, here's a list of students, kind of have like a bidding process. I think I would love to participate in this, and almost every single time it's ended up being kind of bogged down in bureaucracy. I hate to use that word, but and I think that a connection with the staff scientists and the like group leaders would really help tie the knot on these, at least in the DOE lab setting.
Yeah, I understand that completely. If I can go back to the Computational Science Graduate Fellowship for a few minutes, one of the things that we have in that program is a practicum, and it took us a number of years to get that right, because we had to do exactly what you said. We have a practicum coordinator, but the practicum coordinator had to reach out to the staff scientists to say, what are you interested in? Because we have students that might want to come in here, and we want to make that connection so that the students really have a good summer. And so I think we've got to find that same mechanism within the department where we can bring, have coordinators across, and maybe not just the education coordinators that are associated with the WTS, but staff scientist coordinators that say, okay, these people are here, this would be a good fit for you, I've talked to this person, so we start make those connections earlier. We've done it with CSGF, we just have to be more vocal about how we can do it with quantum.
Right, yeah, great. Thank you so much, Barbara, for this perspective. Thank you.